about what keeps us up at night as economic educators, trying to deliver this material that is so important and yet so challenging. And the question is, how best do we do that? I want to talk about triangulated teaching, which means to teach each hard concept from 3 different angles, meaning 3 different explanations of each topic. I want to talk about that because I see it as a silver bullet of types. I was going to symbolize triangulation with this triangulation of silver bullets, and then I realized that's just disturbing. So instead, I would like to talk in terms of a silver pencil. Had I known that we were going to get these silver pens at each table, I would have done that instead. Those are wonderful mementos of a similar concept, but let's triangulate in terms of silver pencils and talk about triangulated teaching and learning, which means, for example, coming at each topic with lecture and discussion, with textbook reading, and with video. For example, this week my mother sent this to me. She said, well, Google wants to know if I want to remove my account from Windows and remove this device so it's no longer on your account. What does this mean? I have no idea. And I said, I have no idea either. It apparently makes sense to some people at Google, whoever came up with it, but that one angle was not enough. And so I went online and I got 2 other explanations, and one of them said, well, you won't be able to use your Google services and you won't be able to use your subscriptions. And another angle said, well, you're going to lose your email and your contacts and your settings. And coming at it from 3 different angles, we started to understand what this meant, what are the pros, what are the cons. And we as economic educators and people who have chosen to come here for EconEd, we approach things, I think, in our real life as lifelong learners in a similar way. If we want to do something new, like we want to change the oil in our lawn tractor, which we haven't done before, what are we going to do, right? First, we're going to talk to an expert. For me, that would be my wife. She knows how to do all such things. I'd get the lecture, and then I would read about it. I would get some details from the manual, and then, am I wrong? I'd go watch a YouTube video, right? That's how we do things. And that triangulation would allow us to do new things well. And we can model this type of triangulation that lifelong learners who are successful carry out in our classroom to teach these hard but important economic concepts with lecture and discussion, textbook, and video. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes there's only one angle, right? A lot of classes don't even have the textbook, right? I want to talk about intentionality in hitting it from 3 different angles. I want to talk about the benefits, I want to talk about more examples, and I want to talk about a broader set of options for how to do this. In terms of benefits, I see them as repetition, multiple modalities, and complementary perspectives. Repetition alone is valuable. This Latin phrase, very old, means repetition is the mother of all learning, right? Robert Brunner says one of the biggest mistakes a teacher can make is to forego the return or repetition. And if we use triangulation to come at it from 3 different angles, for sure we have that repetition. Even if we said it exactly the same way all 3 times, we would have repetition. And there's a large literature that shows that repetition alone is very valuable, especially if it's spaced out. And whether or not you like his politics, we know even our commander-in-chief understands the value of repetition. Right? It makes a difference. Second, multiple modalities. There is a large literature that shows that multiple modalities are very valuable. Dual coding theory says that there are these cognitive subsystems in our brains that receive visual and verbal information differently, and when we combine those, it enhances education. There is also a vast literature that shows that many of the particular angles that we can add to what we normally do, such as video, is very valuable as an addition to what we're always doing. And in that regard, I want to point out by bringing in the teaching pyramid. I think I presented this at the very first EconEd, comparing it to the food pyramid. This is the teaching pyramid that shows that I'm not saying when I talk about video that should replace us or that we should do a whole lot of it in class. Movies, you see, are up there where the sugar would be in the food pyramid, right? Use it sparingly. The foundation is still chalk and talk, but by adding with intentionality 3 or more of these elements to our instruction, I think we become better teachers and our students learn and retain more. And then there's complementary perspectives. This makes me think of the parable of the blind men who discover the elephant, and one feels its body and says, it's like a wall, and one feels its trunk and says it's like a snake, and one feels its foot and says it's like the trunk of a tree, and another feels its ear and says it's like a fan or a palm leaf, and another feels, well, this fellow doesn't have a tusk, but if he did, an elephant is like a spear. Well, there are a couple of lessons from this. One is that there is no absolute truth. That's a little bit deeper than we're going to get today. The other is that when you put together many complementary perspectives, you get a much better idea of the whole. You can understand what's going on. You get a better picture. And if this were price elasticity of demand, and one perspective was its responsiveness to price, and another is that it's that equation, and another one is that it's vertical. It's zero for a vertical demand curve. You start to get a better picture when you get different angles on it. Or from the spending multiplier, these are actual textbook definitions from Krugman. It's the ratio of the total change in real GDP caused by an autonomous change in aggregate spending to the size of that autonomous change. Now that will speak to some people. I think that we want more angles, though. We'll understand it better if we give the equation. There's a concrete bit of information that will help a lot of people. And then this is from my book. It's the total amount of spending that results from each $1 of new spending. Put those together and you have a better picture than if you just gave one of those, which we often tend to do. So let's look at the benefits we get from each of the most common modalities and the complementarity between them. From lecture and discussion, we get customized delivery, right? We can go out and look and see whether people are getting it or not. We can go faster or slower. We can pick on people, wake people up. We can give personal attention to those students. We're all here, right? We like to have the in-person interactions. We can have Q&A. It's better live. That's why we came to New Orleans. To be honest, I'm that way with country music. I would never turn a radio station to country music, but if I go to a Willie Nelson concert or something, hey, this is actually okay. It's better live, right? There's less temptation for distraction where we have our watchful eyes on the students, and if they're on their phone, then we know it and they feel self-conscious about it. There are opportunities for bonding among the students and camaraderie. I think we're okay. We're not going to be out of a job because of video, for example. Why textbooks as a second one? And not everybody uses a textbook, but you have that depth. You have that control. The student can learn as fast or slow as she or he wants. That's pretty nice. That doesn't happen in the classroom. It doesn't happen with a video. These folks, I can tell you, the folks in this room from Macmillan spend years and years making sure that the textbooks are reliable. You're not going to see a lot of errors there. You have flexibility in terms of time and place. It's always there for you. And there are all these supporting resources. Some textbooks, and I chose this one randomly, help with other angles too, right? That they provide multiple explanations, they provide videos, they provide visual aids. And why other media, such as video, but there are a lot of other possibilities. You've got these awesome visual aids. You can show action. You've got clarity and precision. You can take them there, as I'll show you in a minute. You've got versatility. Anything can happen. For example, you can take them in a video to that extraction site. You can take them inside the factory to see the action in there. You can make a long-run aggregate supply curve out of Fruit Loops and have a tractor pull it along. Anything can happen. And that's fun, and that's different, and that's another angle that may speak to other people or fill in what's going on. And for more on what you can do in videos, I put a mashup of the Adventures in Economics videos on YouTube that's just like a minute and a half, showing more examples of what you can do with video. If you triangulate and deliberately come from it from 3 angles, you get all of this, all of those benefits from all of those angles. And that's very valuable. For example, I used to have a hard time getting my students to understand why the marginal revenue curve is below the demand curve for a monopoly. Right? That's always hard for them. Now, I give them the lecture, and then I have them read about it, and then I have them watch a video about it, and it's amazing how they're nailing it after seeing it from 3 angles. They can answer this question, which was very rarely done successfully before. There are a plethora of other possibilities for angles that I just want to brainstorm a little bit. We've talked about lecture and discussion, we've talked about readings, we've talked about educational videos, field trips, depending on where you are. If you have even a big class, but you're in a city, if you're in Boston, you can walk to cool places. And I'm not in a big city, but I've taken my students walking to banks, and they're pretty excited to be in the vault and listen to experts. We can do things like guest lectures, and even if you're at a remote place like me, I'm in the middle of Kentucky, but I can Skype experts in from anywhere in the world. I've had speakers in my classroom via Skype from Bangladesh, and big shots who would never take their time to come to my classroom, but they'll Skype. That's another nice angle. Active learning activities can be a nice angle. Newspaper stories, magazines can be nice angles. Blogs, this is the Dismal blog, dismal.blog, which I recommend. It explains, for example, why it's called the dismal science, and it's not the reason that I thought it was. Check that out. Can be third angles. And somebody already mentioned to me today that they show this. Movies, the sugar, right? Use sparingly, they're at the top, but once in a while, maybe when you're sick or something, you've got laryngitis, show them The Big Short, and it explains the Great Recession in ways that we couldn't do just standing there with chalk and talk. So these are some of the other possibilities for angles, but the goal is to hit each challenging concept from at least 3 different angles. And together that fills in the gaps and provides complementarity, multiple modalities, repetition. Thank you very much.